Here's how I designed an editorial poster from scratch. This is my Photoshop workflow. So this poster is inspired by exhibition layouts, so pretty flat background, a central subject, and typography all around it. We're starting off with a social media friendly post. So we're going with a 3:4 ratio. You can go with 1080 by 1350. In my case, I'm going with 3000 by 4000 just because I love that high quality and detail when you zoom into my posters. We're starting off with 3 simple layers: a background layer, an image layer, and our text layer that we're gonna fix later on. I'm resizing my image here. I only want to keep the subject in there, so I'll just quickly go and click on remove background. And there you go, Photoshop basically does this for you nowadays. Now, underneath our image layer, I'm going to grab my ellipse tool and I'll make a circle for now. I'll bring in 2 guys just to make sure the circle is centered, and then I can delete those. I'll click on the fill and change it to a gradient. Now we can change the gradient to a radial one, and by double clicking on these little squares, you can change their colors. I'll sample one of the oranges from our subject, and then for our outer part, I'll sample one of the dark parts of our subjects. I'll move the orange to the center, and I'll add in the brightest part, which is the center of our circle, a brighter yellowish tone to give that sort of sunset feeling. I'll then go to filter, Gaussian blur, convert it to a smart object, and I'll add about 100. Command T to transform, and I'm going to stretch it a little bit just to give it a nice oval shape. I feel like it frames the subject better. I'll then just go into my layer mask and feather it a little bit to make our subject blend in better with our shape, something like 30 pixels. It's now time to set up our text, and I'll create a new guide layout. I'm going to go with 10 columns and probably something like 12 rows. But you can obviously go with whichever grid system you want to have your text go in. And what I'm going to do is follow this grid. To duplicate everything super fast, you can just hold down the Alt or Option key, click on whatever it is you want to duplicate, and just drag. So I'll use the text reference to just keep on duplicating and placing my text to sort of like frame this poster. We're gonna go from left to center to right, and we're gonna fill our entire poster with that. For the last little bit, I want to just keep the last part of the phrase centered. Once we feel happy with how our text is looking and flowing, we can just remove our guide. And there we have it. Here's a nice other little tip. If you go in with your type tool, just by pressing the Alt or Option and the arrow keys, you can adjust the kerning, the tracking, and all the little spacing things you can change in your text. I feel like even the tiniest spacing changes matter almost more than the font you choose. So adjust your tracking and leading until everything feels good with your poster. I can then select all my other little text parts and just copy and paste these settings I figured out could work from our first little piece of text right there. I'll then just group my text layers and my background image layers. I'll rename them. And then here is where I usually add a couple of textures. These are textures I created and they are free on my website, so you can download them and use them in your posters. The link is in the description down below. For the textures that have a black base, I usually change the blending mode to lighten or screen. For the textures that have a light base, or if you invert a dark base texture, I usually use darken or multiply blend mode. I'll then lower the opacity for them if I think they are showing too much, and then select all my layers, right click, convert to smart object. I'll add some noise to our poster, and I think we're done right now. What I usually do is press Command I to invert our image, so the colors of our image, and then add a hue and saturation adjustment layer. This way you can play around with the colors and the hue and the saturation and the lightness of your image. And then I'll add a curves adjustment and create this sort of S-looking curve. What I usually think is that if your poster works well with the inverted colors, your original one will look really awesome as well. So I usually post two versions. I post the regular version and the inverted version. Sometimes I prefer the inverted version, so I'll put that first and then the normal one. This is looking pretty neat to me, so I feel like we're done. This style kind of proves that you don't need complex effects, just a structure and intention. This is simple, clean, but still has its own personality, I feel like. So don't go crazy with your posters. I mean, you can sometimes, but simple ones can still be very impactful. Anyways, I hope you guys liked this video. Feel free to comment down below if you have any tutorial requests, suggestions, or anything really. You can download my latest texture pack for free on my website. The link is in the description down below. And I hope you have an awesome rest of the day. And I'll see you guys soon. Bye!